Open up, Colorado. It's 420. Time to grind and burn.
This is not your son's stoner show.
Welcome to the Cannabis Community Project. This is Brainstorm, broadcasting live from 3835 Elm Street in Denver, Colorado, from the Dank Studios. Here it is, the Grind and Burn Show. Have you checked out the Cannabis Community Store? Check it out on the website. We have products from our sponsors and more, only cannabis-related products. www.cannabiscommunitystore.com.
I stay G cause I'm so grand. I'm so cold and my coat's mad. Just like these hoes when I drop tracks. Only hit Spasian on wax. That's what I'm claiming. No comparison. Your top 10 favorites. So embarrassing. Ain't nobody.
2017. Have you started your business yet? Have you thought about your cannabis idea? Don't hesitate until next year. Email me at brainstorm@cannabiscommunityproject.com.
Hi, this is Wayne.
Wayne, out in Denver. How you doing, man?
Good. How are you doing?
Excellent. Cool. So you're up in Portland?
Yeah, down in Portland.
Nice.
Yeah. 7 years now, I think it's been. I moved out here right after college. I got a job in Portland. I grew up in Michigan and then went to school and college in Michigan as well.
I say that. I was born in Wisconsin.
Oh, you were? Whereabouts?
Yeah, Madison.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. What did you study in school?
I got a bachelor's in chemical engineering and then a minor in, that wasn't really a minor in business. It was called a concentration in engineering enterprise.
Ooh.
So then when I graduated, I went into basically technical sales. Chemical engineering focused job, but in the sales realm.
What's your interest in media stuff? Where did that come from?
I don't know. It's always, when I was young, I really focused on going down a path that had opportunity, and that's really why I picked engineering. Math and science came easy for me, so it kind of made sense. But I actually spent most of my time doing filmmaking and things like that. Actually, in college, took some filmmaking courses and produced a documentary that got into a couple film festivals. So I went down the engineering route thinking, okay, coming out of school, really need to focus on making money, kind of building a career and keep those hobbies as basically hobbies. And then maybe eventually you could, do something with that once you're financially secure. So I kind of chased the money, to be honest.
And when you say this business, you're talking about the edible business?
Yeah, Periodic Edibles, the company that I'm running right now. Yeah.
What's it called? Periodic Edibles?
Yep, Periodic Edibles.
What's the origin or meaning of that?
So it kind of comes from my background, the periodic table, essentially. So periodic table is kind of play on words, periodic edibles.
Okay.
And having a chemical engineering degree, I have a strong background in chemistry. So I've tried to use that as the focus for branding. And that's basically where the name came from, Periodic Edibles.
So your brand is basically saying that you're scientifically engineering edibles to be the cleanest, purest, that type of angle. Is that what it's implying?
Yeah, I think that's a good way to put it. Even as far as our logo, it looks like one of the periodic elements. 2 letters in the center, 2 description tags in the corners. So yeah, that is the look and brand that we're kind of going for.
Now, what is the laws currently where you live? Are you running this as an above the water business, or is this below the water?
Yeah, good question. We're full above the water. I started a business about 1.5 years ago. Was on the medical side for about a year, and then went recreational. We actually got our recreational license on February 1st.
Okay.
It's been a hell of a ride, definitely.
A few months in operation?
On the recreational side, correct. And we did about a year on the medical side, operations there.
Now, what is your role in it? Are you the owner, the founder, just an employee? What is your role?
Yeah, owner, founder. I started the business a year and a half ago, and for about 6 months, I was doing everything. So I made our only product line is a line of caramels. So we really tried to narrow our focus and stick with one product. And I was kind of born out of necessity, just being limited on what I could do. So when I started, I did it solo. I was making the caramels, packaging them, going out doing sales, trying to do marketing, build a website, and basically started with my savings and bootstrapped the business on the medical side. I had the real good advantage, or was lucky on the timing, in that on the medical side, it was pretty unregulated. You know, with a medical card, you could essentially make them out of your home kitchen. And I think I had my first sale with about only $3,000 and invested in the business before I made my first sale.
Is that including the licensing process, or just what you invested in your operations of it?
Just what I invested in the operations. There wasn't a license actually on the medical side for processors. All you had to have was a medical card, and you were essentially a caregiver, much like the growers would operate, and then you'd sell back to dispensaries.
Okay. Were you taxed, or were you required to pay any type of additional tax or fee for that?
Nope, we did. So the retail locations paid the sales tax, which actually that's only on the rec side. So medical didn't even have that. No, there was no taxes. I used QuickBooks and did the standard business thing, so I paid taxes on profits at the end of 2016. Wow. But no, I mean, man, it was low overhead. I mean, it was just right place, right time. It was really, not much to invest before we started making those first sales, and that's what allowed me to kind of bootstrap it and, invest in it and grow and scale as I went.
So for the recreational part, how much did you have to purchase a license for that?
Yes. Yeah. So that was quite a bit more involved. So we've got commercial kitchen. We had to have the state recreational license, which is only $5,000 a year annually. So it's a pretty good price compared to other states. Full security system, and there was quite a bit more capital that had to go into that. But by the time that came around, I was able to, scale up, make enough on the medical side, and still had enough in savings that thus far we've been able to cover all those costs without taking in any other, outside money.
Nice. So you're doing a kick-ass job then. You're in business and you're moving along. We should do an edible exchange. Right, I'd like to exchange the edibles that my person, I have a private edible maker. I have a person who makes special edibles, gummies. We should do an exchange and see what you think. She actually lives in Southern California in the San Diego area. 150 milligram per gummy, and it's made from keef or from hash oil only. And all of her ingredients are just natural, natural sugar. It's just all. I'll
have to challenge that.
Right. I mean, how many clients over the last, since you've been in business have maintained your business?
So we always, right from the start, sold directly to the dispensaries. I did have a few that individual, private clients that we would sell to. And then now that we've moved over to the recreational side, it's been very restrictive. I mean, with the seed to sale tracking system and the way they follow the, movement of product.
Right.
We've done some home cooking just to keep supplying a couple of those clients that are basically limited by their budget on how much they can consume. So to be able to help them out and not having to pay, the dispensary markup and taxes.
Right.
But really it was right to dispensaries. And I think on the medical side, we were up to almost 30 dispensaries we were in before we switched over to rec.
And what was that maintaining for you? What does 30 dispensaries do from a stability and revenue standpoint? Does it allow you to grow and be profitable? Does it barely pay the bills?
Yeah, definitely. So when I started, I think my first month I sold about $500, and then that pretty much doubled for the next 6 months in a row. Yeah, on the medical side, I got up to about $6,000 to $7,000 a month in sales is what I was doing.
Okay.
Yeah.
By yourself?
So most of that, by myself. Yep. Right around, I hired on one more person near the end, and that was when we were doing about maybe 7,000. That took two people. But right around 6,000 I was maintaining by myself. Yeah.
And what was your margin on that, 6,000-7,000?
Pretty good margin. I mean, especially with the low overhead, being able to make them out of your home. I was running like 65% margin.
Nice. So that's what enabled you then to get the recreational processing done with all that profit you were making
exactly
through that.
Yeah. So it was the money I made on the medical side allowed us to bootstrap over the recreational side. And then I also got lucky a few years back, right after the housing crisis. I purchased a home in Central Oregon. My job after college, paid pretty well, so I was saving from that. But the home that I had bought and then sold 2 years later netted me quite a bit of money, which was really like the nest egg that I used to start the business and kind of be as a backup reservoir in case any, when we transitioned from medical to recreational, there was a period of almost 8 weeks where we had no sales at all, but I still had 2 employees on payroll. So we're kind of going through those funds to keep us alive. But yeah, so it's kind of a combination of things that allowed me to get over to the recreational side.
How do you feel the state is in protecting you from the federal government? Do you feel like you're safe? Are you nervous?
Not that nervous, but it's really hard to say. Until something happens, everything seems fine and calm. They do have the programs, the medical and recreational programs are separated. So I think there would be more security if we did both under one license. Because there's kind of the confusion of them saying, well, medical seems to be okay, but maybe we're going to go after the rec businesses. But overall, the climate in Oregon feels really comfortable. We're a smaller state, so maybe we won't have as big of a bullseye on us. And the regulations we have in place are really tight. So that makes me feel more comfortable. And I think if they were going to take action, maybe somewhere that has a highly unregulated market, like California, might be more of a target. And if we started seeing something happening there, maybe we'd have more concern. But the state's done a pretty good job with regulations.
Very good. So how does this possibly give you enough time? I mean, you're obviously a motivated person. I can tell, and just from hearing your backstory, you're obviously a motivated person. But how can you possibly have enough time to fit in a podcast throughout your week? I mean, granted, it is only, a few hours a week that it requires. But I imagine a startup business of any nature, just from my own experience, is consuming all of your time plus some. Where does the interest in doing a podcast come in?
Yeah, no, that's a really good question. And I'm still struggling with that question right now of, I don't like to commit to anything unless I think really strongly believe I can deliver on, what the agreement is. But I think the opportunity to do the podcast is one that is not going to come up often, unless you're going to try to start a podcast from scratch, which seems like a whole, endeavor. Just looking at it, I heard your one podcast where you kind of put out the announcement looking for a co-host, and I was kind of thinking, wow, because you're right, a startup business is, I do this 7 days a week, pretty much from when I get up till a few hours before bed. But I thought the opportunity of it almost, I thought of it, well, this is a good, what other chance are you going to get to be able to go and interview these other business owners? It gives you an excuse to ask them to sit down for an hour and just ask them a bunch of questions. That's something when I started is how I kind of went about the networking is I tried to find successful companies in Oregon that were already doing it, tried to get the owner's contact information, have a half-hour phone conversation with them and just pick their brain on all the questions I had.
Yes.
So kind of saw it as that, an opportunity to do that. And at the same time, work on if I am going to go down that marketing, branding avenue on what my focus is, I mean, what better experience or trial by fire in public relations to try to have a successful podcast and I guess try to deliver on that.
Yeah. And you can say that with pride rather than any type of embarrassment because using it as a marketing tool is the whole reason this show started. And podcasting in itself is a great marketing tool and a great customer service tool to stay in touch with an audience and let people build a personal relationship with you little by little over time rather than sending them marketing materials and letters and emails and stuff that's just kind of transparent in a sales attempt. This is a very passive way to let people stay in touch and follow you and stay in your realm of overall marketing, but without having to be so direct and so much of a, let me send you this or let me email you this type setup.
Right.
You can build an audience. You can use it to do all those marketing things. And just to be clear, I'm not looking for a co-host. I'm looking for somebody to take over either this show or to start their own show. I'm a lone wolf. I don't need any co-hosts.
No side by side.
I mean, just for clarity, I'm looking for somebody to actually carry their own show, whether it's taking over this one or having another show on the network. So not co-host, where co-host kind of implies somebody else is carrying the show and you're filling in where there needs to be filled in, which is a little different vibe than actually saying, no, this is your show. You're the host.
Right.
You need to carry it, and nobody's going to fill in the dead air and blank spaces for you. So, let's talk about it a little bit. Let's talk about some of the details and technicalities and just the logistics of what it takes to actually do a show. I mean, up to this point, you've done a great job as far as staying in touch and communicating and doing all the little steps and little bits of work to kind of get up to this point where we are finally putting something together. So I thank you for gauging that much and at least taking it serious enough to do those first steps. Like all jobs and all life, as they say, whoever said it, showing up is sometimes half the battle, and sometimes just doing the first steps is half the battle. So from this point on, as you were kind of describing, you're right. It's not building your own show from scratch, something that does take a lot of work and a lot of time and a lot of upfront investment and things that unless you're planning on making this your business, it's just not really feasible from a hobby standpoint. It requires time and it requires energy and money.
I guess that's where I kind of said the co-host word. I was thinking, is that something you wanted to keep on your plate? Or is that something you were also hoping to get off your plate and have me take over if we, were to continue this? Because I see the time with as far as, finding guests, being interested in what they're doing, trying to discover, ask questions around that process and how they got to where they're at and where they're hoping to go. I mean, I think I would, definitely enjoy that process and be able to create the time to do that. It was more around, I'm thinking, production and editing and uploading. How do you see that, or what were you hoping as far as, if we were to do a relationship, how that would work out?
The final production and editing has to be done by me until I am confident somebody can do at least what I'm doing. As I was explaining before, the show has a current format and it has an audience. People are expecting that format. Now, editing is not something that requires you got to go take a course on how to, do editing. That's something that can be learned fairly quickly, fairly easy. And within a matter of a week or so, you can have everything you need to know how to do editing. What I'm more concerned with is, do you understand storytelling and format enough so you can edit something together that has an artistic flow and feel to it and is done with a little bit of creativity and a little bit of technical skill and dedication? It's not fun per se. It's fun. It's fun in the idea of being able to piece things together and kind of create stuff, but it's not fun doing tedious processes of editing. It's not a fun thing to do. It requires a lot of time, and it's kind of boring time, but it's time. The fun part is this right here, is what we're doing right now. Is, recording is the fun part. Until I'm confident somebody can do at least what I'm doing, not that they love it more or that they're better at it, that they can just at least put in the time necessary so when somebody listens to the show, they don't go, what the fuck happened to that show? What I'm looking for is somebody who can be the host, which is different than the producer.
So, this thing, if we say, okay, let's try to work together instead of going whole hog and all in, is there a couple of experiments we can try to do where maybe, I do one or two shows and then we reevaluate, see where we're at, if it still makes sense? Or were you hoping to kind of find someone, get the agreement, and then, try to go all in? Or what were you thinking there?
Well, maybe unbeknownst to you, but you're in that process now.
I am.
You may remember you sent me an audio file of a completed interview a couple days ago, which means you've technically have submitted an audition. We're currently recording now, which means you're kind of in an interview right now. And I'm going to ask you to also send me another file of another guest. And remember, you still have an opening and a closing. So you're kind of in that process now. This is the audition process. The audition process is what we've been doing for the last week or so since we've been communicating, what you've been doing when you went out and got your guest and did your first interview. Hopefully what you're putting together with your opening segments and your little outro, a few seconds, and then your next guest that you're going to line up. All of those things, that is, quote unquote, the audition.
Yeah, good. I that's kind of what I felt like. I did the interview earlier this week, sent that to you, and so far it definitely seems doable. I think I can make the time available. I mean, we'll keep going through these next steps. I'll do the intro, outro, try to secure this next guest, and do that interview. Really, the only anxiety I have around it is just it's really putting yourself out there. It's like, man, can I do this? But I think that's a good thing. I kind of, that's making me want to do it more, is kind of that challenge. And I think, I told you before, coming into this thing, I don't really have any financial motivations. I mean, the edible business is doing well. But really it's just that opportunity to, down a marketing avenue is to not only tell my own story and my business and the things we're going through, but it's to meet these other business owners and bounce questions off them. And hopefully in that process, the listener will find value, whether they're starting a business or just curious about behind-the-scenes process where maybe this thing could grow and develop. But
yeah, I guarantee you what you've already done with your business is far more work than that will ever be required to be a podcast host. In that sense. As far as expectations, you're absolutely right. If people are expecting to go into podcasting as a form of a business, there is disappointing expectations. If you're looking to express yourself creatively, connect with people, have that great foot in the door, as you were talking about, which is hands down the number one benefit this show has brought me over the last 3.5 years, is when I approach a business, 100% of the time, people will accept you into their conversation, their business, or at least listening to who you are if you tell them you have a radio show or a podcast and you want to interview them versus I'm so-and-so sales representative of this company, can I have a few minutes of your time? There is a 100% increase in having a show versus just being a representative as a company. So that in itself is almost $1 million benefit from a podcasting standpoint.
Yeah.
So that's pretty much it, man. I mean, that in itself is the process of what needs to be done. And as I told you, I was going to call you today and I was going to take you through that process as I've just done for the last 46 minutes and 20 seconds of how I conduct my interviews from hello, who are you, what are you doing, where did you come from, and where are we going into the future. We have just completed that process. We have gone through that whole progression of questioning. I have inserted my standard questions as I always do for most any other interviews. So let me now put you on the spot. And we're gonna smash cut. So imagine. So now you got to picture this, right? So this is the editing producer mind, right? You gotta imagine how this is going to happen. Right now, you're going to hear like maybe a smash cut, a record scratch, some type of drastic change in music. Right? It's happening right now. You can't hear it yet, but it's actually happening right now. And then from out of that, we are going to hear you coming from the fade up as the host of the show, and you are going to be calling me, and we're going to do a 5-minute improvised interview, and I'm going to put you on the spot. Yes?
Yeah.
All right.
We'll put it together.
Okay.
5 minutes.
So you ready? Here it goes. 3, 2, 1.
All right.
There it goes.
Ignorance, isn't it a little bit ironic how the universe is flat, but we feel like a mile tall and when you ask for answers.
Have you drank your Kool-Aid yet today?
Here I come. Welcome back, Cannabis Community Project listeners. We've got a fascinating guest on the line today. We're going to talk to the founder of Cannabis Community Project, Brainstorm. We've got Brainstorm on the line. Brainstorm, are you there?
I'm here. Thank you. It's good to be here.
Yeah, man. Good to have you. So let's get started with kind of doing an introduction. Tell the people who you are, what the business name is, and what you do.
Absolutely. My name is Brainstorm. Obviously, it's my moniker. I choose not to use my own name. I run the Cannabis Community Project, and I produce and host a show called the Grind and Burn. It's a cannabis-focused show that mostly focuses on the business, industry, and entrepreneurs of the cannabis industry. I either go out to businesses or have business owners come to me, and I'll interview them about their life and their business practices in an attempt to motivate other people to get involved in business in the cannabis industry, but also to break the stereotype of the stoner and to show people that there's motivated stoners out there.
Great. So a cannabis business podcast. I think podcasts, a lot of people listen to podcasts now, and you think, it's just two people talking. How do you start a podcast, and how did you decide to focus on the cannabis industry? Have you been in the industry before, or was the podcast your first entrance into the industry? What'd you do in the past?
The podcast was my first introduction into having a business in the cannabis industry. Previous to that, I had been a patient and then a lifelong user since junior high. So when I was younger, I dabbled in various illegal activities around cannabis. And then about 2013-ish, I was involved in a marketing company, and that was pretty much my background, was marketing and sales. And I was looking for a way to help a company that was in the cannabis industry promote themselves. And I had been listening to podcasts for about the last 3 or 4 years when I got my first, not iPhone, but the iPod, if you can remember those still. I had an iPod, and I had this feature of Stitcher Radio that I found on there, and I found a couple people I recognized. I started listening to Mark Maron's WTF podcast, Adam Carolla, a lot of Adam Carolla, Joe Rogan Experience, and various other podcasts, and just got into them on a daily basis. And I started to tell people, I think I'm going to start a podcast. And it started with me just verbalizing it. And then the day came along when I had a company approach me for a marketing idea to help their cannabis industry get into the field, because cannabis industries are really limited in how they can market publicly and sell their product. So they were stretching for ideas. And I said, well, how about a podcast? I can produce it. And at this time, I had no idea how to produce a podcast, so I was kind of lying to them. And they were into it. So I spent the next month and a half researching how to do a podcast. And I came across a podcast called The School of Podcasting with Dave Jackson. And his podcast is all about how to start podcasts. So I listened to his show, and I listened to his backlogs of shows, probably 50 hours or so of shows. I subscribed as a member to his website, and I became a student of the School of Podcasting. And I downloaded all the videos, and I read books, and I read all the articles. I basically jumped in by starting to record my first show. And it took me about 3.5 weeks to get my very first 1-hour show out on the air. And it was a very long learning curve, and it took a very long time. But that was the start of how it all came about.
How'd that first podcast start with? So it was a client that came to you, and this was kind of your idea. How did it evolve that you kind of took this thing and ran with it? And was the other business involved right off the start? Did they do a couple and said, we're not interested now? How did you kind of end up with the whole thing?
The way I ended up with most of it is I realized that most people don't really want to do what they say they want to do. And for everybody else who can just hang on, will usually end up with the fruits of what's left. And that's kind of what happened to me. Is there was an idea. Yes, it was kind of my idea, but it required a team effort. I hooked up with another radio station on the other side of town that I was actually broadcasting. My first couple of shows were broadcast from, and they had a crew and production crew. The company was supposed to put money into the sponsorship and advertising to help fund the show. And what happened is they realized, oh, this is work. This is a lot of work. Matter of fact, this is way more work than we want to actually do. We thought it was going to be like, hey, once in a week we would just smoke and joke in front of a microphone, and then thousands of people would listen to us and millions of dollars would come rolling in. When they realized that it almost took a full-time person working on it, which required financial support, they quickly backed out. I had already purchased equipment. I had basically purchased website domains. I had purchased microphones. I had purchased, a recorder. I had done everything up to that point where I was kind of past the point of no return. And I thought it was a great idea. So I said, I'm going to go with it. And I learned what I did, and I kept going with it, and I just hung on. And my joke was, I may not be the best, but I'm going to be number one by default because everybody else will drop out over the years. So by default, I'll be number one. And that's kind of true is what's been happening is people start podcasts, and in a month in, 6 months in, 2-3 years in, they drop out, and I'm just hanging on so I can win by default.
Yeah. How long ago was that now when that client kind of stepped aside and you made that decision? How long has it been?
That was August of 2013, so 7, 6, 5.
4.
Coming right up on 4 years, yeah.
What were those first couple of years like when the client kind of moved aside and you said, you know what, I think I'm gonna keep running with this thing? What was the focus or the hope with the podcast? Was it monetary right away? Was it just building the network? What were you hoping to accomplish?
I was hoping to have a week-by-week growth exponentially by the thousands. I was expecting sponsors to come out of the woodwork with thousands of dollars. And honestly, within 6 months, I thought I would have a full network or at least a full-going show with maybe a small staff of 2 or 3 working. That was quickly, I would say exploded my dreams and visions of that. By about week 8, when I realized that the audience was growing at a rate of about 15 or 20 people a week, sponsors weren't really interested in sponsorship. I had a couple, 1 or 2, but the dollar amounts were so low, they were just barely paying for the infrastructure, like the hosting and the storage and the website domains. It was barely covering those costs. And I had no studio. I was on foot. And I pretty much, by the end of my first year, thought, oh, this is not at all going to work or happen. It was well into my second year before things really started to pick up, before the numbers on the weekly audiences started to pick up. A lot of it happened when I was accepted into the iHeartMedia, which they kept denying me for the first year or so. Once they finally accepted me, I started to get a lot more listeners. That opened up sponsorship. And once you start getting sponsors, then other sponsors are more agreeable to the idea of sponsorship. And then it started to build on itself. And then in my second and a half year, I hooked up with the dispensary, got a full-time permanent studio. That increased sponsorship, that increased exposure, that increased collaboration with more businesses. And little by little, it's been growing. But honestly, I would say every month along the way, I've thought I was going to drop out and quit the whole thing because of lack of expectations or success that I thought would happen.
Yeah, you definitely grinded it out.
Grind and burn.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that process, man, where you start with expectation. I think a lot of people have those, big dreams, pie in the sky, and 2 months in, it's like, well, where is it? It's not there yet, and you drop out. So, I mean, congratulations for pushing it out that far, 4 years, staying committed. There was obviously some kind of passion or drive that just wasn't monetary or hoping that this would become your, sole source of income that kept pushing you. What do you think that was?
The origin of wanting to do something from a business standpoint happened when my brother passed away of leukemia in 2009. He died of cancer, and he was a cannabis grower in the Emerald Triangle up in Northern California. He lived in a 2-bedroom home, and he slept in his kitchen because both bedrooms were on a 12-hour cycle. He sold off every 6 to 8 weeks a few pounds, and, he made a living. And he got sick and he died. And it made me want to do something to feel like I was connected to what he loved and what he was part of, which the only thing we really shared in common as siblings was our cannabis use. That there was kind of a deep-seated notion that I wanted to do it in memory of him or some type of homage to, just remembering my brother and his passing of cancer. And that was kind of the basis of where I started the show. Was this show is not a stoner show because I wanted to have a little more meaning than just simply sitting around smoking and joking.
Yeah, that's great, man. It's almost like a promise or a commitment to him that, bring this industry out of the dark, bring it to the forefront and really, put a professionalism on it that makes it more acceptable to that many more people.
Yes, absolutely.
That's great. What's your plans down the road? Where are you hoping this thing's going to lead? What are you hoping to accomplish in the future?
Well, I'm actually in a transition point right now where I'm expanding the show at the same time as I'm lowering my personal involvement in the show. That may seem like a contradiction, but I'm taking myself out of the show, and by doing that, I'm actually expanding it. I'm an entrepreneur myself, so this is not my only source of employment, nor my only business, and that requires a lot of my time to be involved in other things. I want to pursue other things, also cannabis related, but just other types of work. So I'm going to take this show and I'm going to give it away to the community by allowing guests from the community to come and host shows, create shows, and be involved in the production of shows so I can free up more of my time, not give it up, but just make it more of one of my entities rather than my main focus of an entity right now. So hopefully in the next 3 or 4 months, we'll hear more voices and more shows come out on the network. Unfortunately, that will mean less of my voice, but hopefully that means better for the community in general.
That's great. So you're holding open auditions and seeing who's out there who might be interested in taking up the lead role then.
Open auditions, and the only requirement that I'm really putting out to people is not a technical one. I don't care if people know how to do podcasting, radio, even turn on a microphone. That's not what concerns me. What concerns me is people's motivation for wanting to be involved and people's ability to actually dedicate some time to making it happen. I think if people have a desire to be involved and they actually put in some time to make it happen, I think something can happen. And all the technical stuff I can work out, or we can work out together, but I'm really looking for people that have that inner something that they're looking to fulfill, whether it's to talk into a microphone, talk to other people, be recognized, whatever it is, they're looking to fulfill something just a little bit more, and they see media or this specific type of media as a way to do that. And that's the type of person I'm looking to work with. Technical abilities are great, but if you're an asshole or you're lazy, it doesn't help me that much to be technical savvy.
Yeah, definitely. What's the old cliche saying? Hard work beats talent if talent doesn't work hard.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, that's great, man. Thanks for your time. Really appreciate it. Listeners out there, you heard it first. If you think you've got an interest in the cannabis industry and cannabis business owners and want to get more involved and potentially host a podcast, reach out to Brainstorm, contact@cannabiscommunityproject.com. Reach out to him and get that ball rolling. See what we can make happen. I'm pretty good time, man.
Now you hear the music fading back up. Can you hear it? The music's coming up.
Ooh.
And you always got to end it with the same ending line at the very end. Always has to be. We'll see you next week.
We'll see you next week.
Hello, Cannabis Community Project listeners. My name is Wayne, filling in the host position for Brainstorm. So, who am I? Well, I own an edible business in the state of Oregon and operate that business in the newly launched recreational market. We'll be talking to cannabis business owners, legislators, regulators, people just starting their cannabis businesses, and seasoned business owners already in the industry, getting the insights into the new, ever-growing, ever-evolving cannabis industry, and hopefully, while doing so, bringing you guys new opportunities and resources to either enter the industry or move your career path forward with some new information and insights that will help you do so. Today's show is being recorded live from Portland, Oregon. Our conversation today will be with Adrian from Greenbox. Adrian is the founder and operator of Greenbox, which is a subscription box service for the cannabis industry. Taking advantage of the new regulations put in place for cannabis home delivery in Portland and the state of Oregon, Greenbox will offer a monthly subscription box service that will include top-shelf flower, concentrates, edibles, extracts, and pretty much everything in between, which is delivered directly to your door. Can't get much better than that. But that's enough of me talking about Greenbox. Why don't we talk to Adrian, the man himself, about how he started the business, where he's at in the process, and what his dreams and goals are for the business. And let's get started. All right, here's Adrian from Greenbox.
They keep at a pace. Love is the light scaring darkness away.
Y'all thought that I pound side sour girl in this After all the hard work that I done put in, that we done put in.
Let's go. Hold my hand, no looking back unless you wanna backtrack. Gotta stay tacked, don't fall back in the trap. Misery will attack, our dreams becoming real. Just gotta stay up on the path.
All right, just like that, I think we started. Looks like we're recording. Got an eye on the levels here. Looking good?
Yes.
All right, let's start with a simple introduction.
So, my name is Adrian Wayman. I'm one of the co-founders of Greenbox. We're a cannabis subscription box service here in the Portland area. We were founded about October of 2015 when we first came up with the idea. It's a family business, so it's me, my in-laws, Bob and Barb, and my husband, dibs and dabbles, helps us out when we need it. We're here to serve the Portland area, to bring a new service, something new to the cannabis industry. When we first started this venture, delivery was just a temporary idea within the state regulations for the new regulated recreational market.
Yeah.
And so at that point, I saw opportunity for delivery, and I took it and ran.
Yeah, so subscription box service, essentially, because this business model exists in some other industries,
Yes.
and it's kind of in the cannabis space, a similar approach.
Absolutely. It's a very common business model. Subscription box, you pay a certain fee. Monthly, you get a box delivered to your house with various items surrounded around a certain theme. Yeah. Whether it's makeup, men's goods, household needs, you name it, there's a box for it. There's not many subscription boxes for actual cannabis, and especially not for adult use cannabis. You have various boxes that you can get pipes and papers and that type stuff.
Right. But none the actual plant, THC, CBD, things like that. Those are out there right now.
Correct.
Great.
Yeah, so I went to culinary school. That was one of my first ideas of doing something better with myself. I love to cook, and quickly learned that they don't teach you how to cook, they teach you how to run a kitchen. I didn't want to learn how to run a kitchen. I wanted to learn how to, make a badass steak sauce or wine sauce, stuff like that. Wasn't too interested in knife skills.
Was it the running the kitchen side? Was it more than management style, business focused, and less on the art and creation of dishes? And that's more what you were looking for?
Yes, exactly. It was learning how to be a manager.
Yeah.
Which, at that time, I just wanted to be a badass cook.
Yeah. That's like that looking for, a similar thing, kids going to college right after graduating high school and, expected to pick what they're going to be, in the next 30 years. It's like, I'm almost hitting 30, and I'm still trying to, maybe I'll lock into this one now,
Yeah.
So that search.
That method didn't fit for me. Making a decision for your rest of your life, I couldn't figure it out, It was 1 week it was this, 1 week it was that, but I could definitely tell you I love to be in school. I could be a career student. The course that I was in, I always applied to myself. Then I eventually focused into audio engineering. Me and my friends had always had an interest into making music in my garage and basement and stuff like that. I got my hands on a MacBook and GarageBand.
No, it's. I gotta say too, I don't know how lucky I am. So I'm trying out this podcasting thing, and doing co-host for Brainstorm, and I'm I get the equipment, I got some software. This is my first rodeo. So then I show up. Adrian's like, oh yeah, I used to be a audio engineer, and I'm like, hey, I can set those levels, we get that all running, and I'm like, let's do it.
Let's do it.
Perfect. Yeah. So the audio engineering started. How long were you in school for? A couple years with that?
So that took a year and a half. Year and a half, I completed the program, and I continued to work as a tracking engineer in a studio. So basically, I just recorded vocals, recorded and edited vocals, and I felt like I hit a plateau in being in the South.
Still in Georgia?
Still in Georgia, around the same friends that I've been around for the past 10 years. Some have moved on, some have didn't. And I dying to just get out of the South for many different reasons. I hit a plateau. I had a lot of potential, and it wasn't going anywhere being in Georgia. So I just so happened to met some guy I guess you can say I fell in love.
Yeah.
Then we
always
both
starts.
moved to Portland. He was originally from Portland. He wanted to move back home. I had visited Oregon when I was 14. I used to run USA track and field program. I ran the hurdles. I was a 400-meter hurdler. Really good national athlete, Junior Olympics. Actually, that year we ran in Eugene for the national championship. Met some pretty cool people.
Sounds like a hell of an experience.
Yeah, it was good. I was young, new. I think the most cool part about it is I was so new to Oregon, and it quickly gave me exposure to so many different areas in Oregon immediately.
Yeah.
And so, okay, this is, I quickly was able to find out where I fit into the community and neighborhood. And
So with him for how long did you do that? Setting up the stages and shows and putting that on?
I did that till about 2014, and that's when I went to school to study electrical engineering. My original plan was to get a 4-year bachelor's, and to take a shortcut, I ended up studying civil and mechanical engineering for 2 years and got an associate's degree. Just shy of it.
Yeah.
I'm literally about 8 credits away from getting that associate's degree. And the only reason why I finished because I, in the process, came up with the idea of Greenbox while I was studying. So I said, okay, delivery is an option. I think I got an idea. I love the subscription box model. So I brought it up to one of my coworkers who's now a cultivator at Bull Run Craft Cannabis, Steve. I was like, hey man, I got this idea of the subscription box model. It's a delivery. I think we could do it. What do you think? One of the quickest things I realized as a bud tender was the accessibility to dispensaries, and there was a gap between the older community and dispensaries. They weren't coming in, or at least weren't coming into our shop. I shop around at other places. I don't see anyone of older age going into these places, so it doesn't make any sense. So why is that? And, as I begin to ask around, it's quickly, people just don't feel comfortable. Back stigma, they feel most bud tenders are younger than their grandsons, which kind of doesn't help in my sense, seeing that I'm 26.
Yeah.
But I saw that was a challenge and there's a gap, so I said, let me solve that problem.
And so for listeners, if they don't know, Oregon basically just went from the transition from the medical market to the recreational market, which is where we are now, and that happened very recently. So you were on the medical side as a bud tender. How long were you at Panacea before that conversation happened with Steve and then taking the next steps?
So I had probably been a bud tender for about 6 months. Well, thought about the idea, I would say October of that year.
What was the process? So that conversation started, the idea, you started working on the things. Where did it go, where it turned the corner and kind of went from, doing all those things you could do for free, just took time and effort, to, okay, I got to put some money in this thing? That decision was made, and where did the money come from? Financing, credit cards? How did you go about that process? Investors?
Our first step was just securing the business. We did a limited liability company, LLC, and we registered with the state and to make sure there's no other green boxes around that I don't know about. And after we secured the domain names and all that type stuff, I reached out to other people that kind of had their foot in the industry, but not completely, to say, hey, I have this idea, what should be my next step? And a friend told me, well, first thing you should work on right now, since everything is temporary, work on your branding. Get you a package, get your box developed, and just start there. So that's what we did. So I did some networking to try to find investors, more so, not really investors, more so of a teammate, because I definitely wanted to keep it small business. I'm definitely all into getting angel funding and stuff like that, but I wanted to make sure that I always had control of my company and decision-making powers no matter what. So over time, over the next couple of weeks after we got the packaging. I think we just finally decided to say, hey, we're gonna do this all on our own. The rules are still, at this point, still temporary, so we don't know if delivery is going to even be finalized in the final rules and regulations for the recreational market.
So yeah, you're kind of...
That's also was the next challenge as well. So I have this idea of this business model, but the specific rules that they have laid out, it will make it very, very challenging. One with the $100 limit in your vehicle at a time.
It's a lot of trips.
That's a lot of trips.
Back and forth.
A lot of trips. That was plan 2. Yeah. After we got our box design, let's work on the regulations. Let's figure out how can we do this business legally.
I've noticed it almost seems like in this industry, you've got to start with the regulations and then design a product around them almost. Because, when we started, we almost worked, it was kind of backwards. We started with the products. And we go, okay, now let's go figure out what the regulations are.
I personally didn't get any support from local dispensaries. There was another entrepreneur in my position, I believe the founder of Stemless, which is a online delivery ordering platform. I believe we were the only ones fighting for delivery. I believe the other dispensary owners were focused on their own particular battles to get licensed and be compliant.
And what did change? What did they decide on those deliveries? I believe they increased them.
Yeah, so at some point during the summer, I don't really know what made them change their mind. I know on the last day you could submit public testimony or written testimony, I literally drew out a few different maps of, hey, this is our location. Here's the customer. Here's customer A, B, and drew an example of, with these proposed rules that you have, this is why it won't work.
This is how I'm going to have to run my business.
Yes. This is how I would have to operate, and there's no way you can be profitable. The final rules came out, and that delivery limit rate was raised to $3,000. I was not expecting it to be anywhere that high. But they listened. But that was just the first battle. That was on the state level. At the time, delivery was still illegal within the Portland city limits. So I crossed that hurdle. Then I had to focus on the city of Portland. And kind of a mistake on my hand for not fully reading the Portland city ordinance. At the time, I didn't have a full, completely understanding of the regulations. But once I got a better understanding of the regulations that were in the actual city limits and realized the standard procedures that I had been working on, going back to transparency, I literally laid it all out. This is what we plan to do. This is how we're going to do it. This is how I can ensure safety.
I think that's huge and important. You gotta, even if you think it's illogical, the reasons for their regulations, you really gotta understand what the rule makers' motivations are. What are their actual concerns? And if you can identify those, it does give you the opportunity then to present your case around those narratives that they're looking for, safety. Because, you hear it from a lot of people that, well, this doesn't make any sense. It's all a conspiracy. It's the big thing. But if, safety is a huge one. So you identify that and then try to address that for them.
I would say a lot of their decisions are based on, it's always based on some type of worry. And if you can address, like you said, if you can address it, and I believe that's what I did. I was able to address all of their concerns even before they were able to ask me. In the midst of me sharing my business plan, because I knew from the beginning that was going to be a big issue. It was, number one, it was a concern of mine. Communicating that was the challenge, but that's ultimately what helped us make it happen.
Yeah. So then Portland allowed it. You got the state, you got the actual city of Portland. What's kind of give us an overview? So you're allowed to operate in Portland.
Right.
It's a subscription box service.
So,
what was the, pre-marketing, planning, trying to get people on a subscription list ahead of time? What's that? What was your approach kind of starting once you knew it was legal and it's like, okay, now I can start doing, operations?
I have to figure it out myself because mentally I will want to know how it works. Even if I pay someone, I want to know what am I paying them to do?
Yeah. And
what headache am I saving, you know?
In the future, I've noticed too, is as you hire people, you can't really delegate work unless you know how to do it yourself first. You know, once you understand the work, then you can kind of hand it off. But yeah, if you don't have the basis, you know, for that. You brought up a point earlier, or a comment when you said, I think it was when you were looking to talk to the OLCC, the state agency with the regulations, you said, I didn't know where to start. So you just start asking people, you know, people that might be higher up or you look to as successful in the industry. And I think that's a good pointer for anyone starting out or first timers. You'd be surprised. Reach out to people. Reach out to business owners. You know, and as you're an entrepreneur, you have to do every single task. Accounting. I don't know very many people that like doing accounting, but when it comes to that, I've never done it before. What the hell do I do? Start calling accountants. You can get a lot of free consultations. You can call friends. You meet friends. Even finding this place, you know, just happened to be. You know, you had to go through all that other work that didn't pan out to find the one that did.
Networking.
Yes.
Networking is the first thing that comes to mind now. I built a network around me. I didn't know where to start. I felt that I was just butt tender with an idea and not really much money behind it.
Yeah.
I went to networking events and I found people who I thought were successful and literally asked them, where should I go? Where should I start?
Anywhere people can find you, how to reach out to you, see what you got going on?
Yeah, easy way to find us is at pdxgreenbox.com. Also, we're on social media at greenbox_pdx. That's our Instagram, Facebook, facebook.com/greenboxpdx. You can also find us at our Know Your Cannabis workshops that we host every other month, last Thursday of the month, at the Hollywood Senior Center from 10:30 to noon.
I could talk about that for an hour.
Yeah.
Next podcast, we're going to dive into that. We'll save that till the next one.
Save that for another one.
Right on, man. All right, we'll wrap this up.
All right, thanks for having me. I enjoyed it. Good chatting with you. Looking forward to doing this podcast again.
Definitely, man. Thank you. Appreciate it. All right, CCP listeners, that was Adrian with Greenbox. I did get a chance to talk with Adrian after our conversation and asked if he had any opportunities available for you guys. He did mention that they are looking for new potential hires and more specifically delivery drivers. So if you're in or around the Portland area or even considering a move to Portland and looking to get involved in the cannabis industry, reach out to Adrian with a resume, cover letter, and let him know why you're interested. All right, guys, thank you for joining us again. Follow us on all the media. We can be heard on Spreaker, iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Tumblr, and even YouTube. Share us with your network and keep on listening, Cannapreneurs. We'll see you next week.